기사부대, hop on the beat!
Welcome back to another JoJo chapter review. This time we're taking a look at chapter 13 of the JoJOLands, titled The Absurd Event That Happened to Me That Year. This one is a real heavy chapter and I have a ton to talk about today, so let's get right to it. This time we open up with a flashback from 4 years ago. We are told that this is the day when Jodio and Dragona became aware of their stands. We see a 14-year-old Dragona who appears more male-presenting at this point in time. We're shown that they're being bullied on the school bus by a rich girl. The girl's parents donate money to the school, making the teacher turn a blind eye to the bullying. The same is also true for the bus company and driver. She starts to accost Dragona over their gender, with the other kids laughing along. She mocks Dragona for not wearing a bra and threatens to draw one on them using an eyelash curler. While this happens, we see a raindrop form on the ceiling and drop onto the bully's head, and a young Jodio appears behind her who has come to bring Dragona home. The raindrop becomes heavy and pierces the bully's eyelid, showing Jodio's first use of November rain. Jodio listens to Dragona in pain that night, and the next day he uses his stand to sabotage the bus, sealing the door and setting the bus on fire. Bottles of fuel inside cause the fire to spread, trapping everyone inside. He watches the fire, but sees one of the students' pet parrot, which makes him extinguish it with his stand. We later see a conversation with Jodio and Dragona's parents, which is our first glimpse at their father. Barbara Ann says that it was lucky that Dragona took the day off and missed the fire. Dragona knows that Jodio was behind it and says that he needs to get help, but also thanks him. Dragona says that their heart was on the verge of dying and that Jodio brought them back to normal before that happened. Dragona swears to get stronger and to keep this a secret between them. They use smooth operators to move their scar off their chest and onto a spoon, and gives a name to both of their stands. We get narration from Dragona saying that the events that happened were neither good nor evil, but were irrational and absurd. They say that absurd things happen without any connection to the life someone lived up to that point, and that they are truly random, but that despite having no responsibility for it happening, hearts are destroyed by absurd events. We see that Jodio couldn't let what happened go, and that if you can't let go, you'll resign yourself to your heart being destroyed. Barbara Ann tells the siblings that their father was fired from the insurance company he worked at and has left them. The bully's family forced the insurance company to pay for the accident, who shifted the blame onto their father, causing him to leave Hawaii. With Barbara Ann as the only one to support the family, she becomes vulnerable to the local gangs. We see the siblings meeting Meryl May for the first time, who proposes that they work together. Jodio and Dragona decide to secretly support their mother from the criminal underworld, as we saw in the first chapter. We go back to the present with Meryl May being introduced to Charming Man. We get another funny scene of her asking everyone to turn their phones off, reminding us of her day job as a school principal. The group says that they should trust Charming Man due to the story of his brother. He tells them about the lava tubes and Rohan's experiments with the lava rocks. He says that the land on the mountain where his brother disappeared is owned by a company called Howler. This seems to be a new music reference to the King Crimson song The Howler. He says he believes his brother is alive, but that the area where he went missing is prohibited. The police and mountain rangers seem to be controlled by the company, blocking any access to the land and the truth about Malka. Paco and Usagi think the idea of this conspiracy is absurd, something which strikes a chord with Jodio and Dragona. Meryl May devises a plan to use the lava rock since she's already familiar with Howler. By bringing the rock close to the rights of the mountain, they can create a system of flow of money to them. She says that the transfer could add up to $50 billion and offers 20% to the group. She asks if they'll accept, and the chapter ends. I just have to say that I think this is possibly the best chapter we've gotten so far since the first one. The story we got for our main duo of Jodio and Dragona was gut-wrenching and also very touching, and gives us a whole new angle on our main character. We really got to see the darkness in Jodio as a character, with him very nearly killing a bus full of people. I can definitely feel the Phantom Blood Dio parallels here with putting Danny in the furnace. Here, there's sort of an inversion of that, where seeing an animal burning inside actually makes Jodio stop the fire. The new universe of parts 7 and 8 have played around a lot with the idea of positive and negative flow. We most see this through how the universe flushes out the powers of fate that we're used to from JoJo. The positive flow brings good fortune and is represented by the saint's corpse in the golden ratio, where the negative flow brings bad fortune and is represented by the forces of calamity. In previous videos, I've brought up the idea of yin and yang in relation to flow, the concept of a positive and negative force that exists in balance and both contradict and complement each other. After this chapter, I think this also perfectly represents Jodio and Dragona as well. Jodio himself has a lot of darkness to his character, and from his opening narration he even comes off as downright evil, but he still has some light inside him and will do what's right. And for Dragona, while I think this will be fleshed out more in the future, they're generally a more jovial person compared to Jodio's more deadpan attitude, while having pent-up darkness inside them. What stands out the most to me are Dragona's words from this chapter about their heart being on the verge of collapse. In spite of the darkness of his character and his inability to let go, Jodio still doesn't let Dragona fall completely into darkness, and he shoulders the burden of not just that action he took at the bus, but of the whole series of events that followed which tore apart his family. Ironically, the thing that ended up uprooting the structure in their lives is also what strengthened their bond as siblings. We also got a very troubling story for Dragona and the way they were bullied and sexually assaulted in this chapter. I've unfortunately seen some negative reception to this scene, some saying that it was going too far and even that it was done distastefully. However, I disagree entirely. Personally, I think the subject was handled tastefully precisely because it was so brutal. Araki did what I felt he always does and injected a sense of reality into the story. This kind of thing is faced by real people, and not only does it make sense to be shown here, it should be shown here to give awareness of what people like Dragona experience. The scene is also clearly not meant for just shock value, since it plays a very clear role in the direction of Dragona's character. And the fact that Dragona has experienced this much trauma makes the focus of this chapter, their relationship with Jodio, even stronger. Another very unfortunate take I saw was that Araki is simply inserting a hot-button issue into JoJo with this scene. This kind of idea hardly even deserves a response. JoJo has had plenty of depictions of discrimination or sexual assault before. To permit those as normal and only single out this scene as somehow going too far, especially when this is the first one of those scenes that reflects the reality of a transgender or gender non-conforming person, I think says a lot about how you view those people. Really, I don't see any other reading of that other than plain bigotry. If you think these people's experiences only exist to be a hot topic that shouldn't be confronted in fiction, then I'm just not going to take what you say seriously. I'd say one of the main questions a lot of people are asking when it comes to this chapter is if Dragona is transgender. Now, I definitely think it's a hard question to answer since there's a lot of factors at play, with varying accounts from the characters in the story and possible unreliable narration at points. We also need to consider that gendered language in Japanese is very different than English, and they don't really have things like he or she in casual conversation. However, all of that doesn't really matter that much compared to Dragona themselves expressing what their gender is. Now, if we only consider direct expression through words, Dragona hasn't really spoken openly about the topic at this point in the story. However, I think Dragona's actions also work as a form of expression here. I think it's very clear that Dragona goes far out of their way to present as female. While some have argued that this may be a form of self-defense for the trauma in their past, I just don't see how that's the case. Since part of this chapter was about Dragona not collapsing under the pressure of their trauma, I think it's clear that their actions after this point are entirely their own. I feel like even just the simple changes we see them go through throughout this flashback feel like a natural transition rather than something that was induced on them. And if that were the case, I feel like it would have been indicated directly in some way. So for the question of Dragona being trans, I do believe she is, although I don't doubt that more about it will be brought up later on. For the story to come, we've also been introduced to Howler, which I believe has potential to be set up as the main villain group of the series. I imagine that most of the enemy stand users we see are going to be related to the conflict that's about to start here. We don't know yet since most of this chapter was looking at the really hard-hitting character stuff for the siblings, but this last bit does make me interested in seeing what the next major arc is going to be. Looking back at this chapter, I'd like to know what your thoughts are. You already heard mine, so feel free to comment since I feel like there's a lot of interesting discussion to be had here. In other JoJo news, next month in April, the JoJoLands will once again be featured on the cover of Ultra Jump. Alongside that, we'll also see the release of the 3rd volume, going over the visit to the luxury watch store and the fight with Charming Man. Here I'm thinking we'll finally get a name for his stand, which I'm really looking forward to. The same day, we're also getting 2 new releases. First is a new The Spokushibe Rohan short story collection. The author this time is Katsui Shibata, who is new to the series. We'll also see the full retail release of Rei Infinito, the novel about Lisa set between part 2 and 3, which focuses on her encountering stand users in South America. The story was released in 3 parts across the issues of the JoJo magazine. Now it's getting a standalone book release. I'm really hoping that the book will come with new illustrations by Araki, since that story has so many characters and especially stands that I think need an official look. The previous book like this was the published version of Iggy the Stray Dog, which also originated from the magazine. That book unfortunately didn't have any new illustrations and just reused images from the manga. For this release, the story is also renamed. Instead of being called Rei Infinito, it is now called LLF, named after the stand of the story's main villain. Our other big news is we finally got a better look at the recently released Phantom Blood musical. We got a series of over 40 images of the play, as well as a trailer that shows off quite a lot. I think it looks amazing, and they've done a really good job portraying all the memorable moments, including ones that the anime actually skipped over. One thing I was really looking forward to seeing was Danny, which totally exceeds my expectations with a really nice looking puppet. Another really cool thing they do is this group of actors who are actually playing the Ripple. We see them form around people whenever the ability is used, and I see it being done in some really cool ways, like lifting Zeppeli off the ground and also acting as the Zoom Punch. We also got a lengthy trailer that shows snippets of the songs across the whole show. Overall, I'm ecstatic to be able to see this at some point. There's going to be a live stream of a filmed version of the show in April, which will be archived for a while after the stream as well. It's possible that we'll be able to view it this way if it receives some fan subs. That's about everything I have to talk about today. If you want to keep up with future videos, make sure to subscribe and click the bell. To be notified on new uploads and chapter releases, you can also join the Hum and Beat Discord. Finally, I'd appreciate if you help support the channel on Patreon. There you can receive Discord perks and submit patron questions. If you want to ask a question, you can join at any tier and post them in the community chat on the mobile app, or by DMing them to me directly. I answer a question at the end of all my main videos, so feel free to ask as many as you want, and they don't necessarily have to be JoJo related either. Thank you for watching. This is the part of the video where I thank my $5 and up patrons. Thank you to Sloth Dog, Doorbell, Crayon, Rigovids, Zucato, Pumpkin Doge, Marrow, Almighty Quarth, Gatlin Grove, Lime Jinjo, Sponge Cake, Cakext, Feliciano Rabaja, Rayana Meme, Christian McDonough, Emmanuel Etienne, Pulse Dog, Great Riek, Carmo Trina, Zach Greenfield, FIFO, Rob Goliath, Jacob Smith, Big T, C Manga, Minty, Gold, Darko, Jolene, and Monticelli.